Now, I don't usually do this, but I'm actually going to show a report from the BBC. I've literally sitting in front of the TV screen here. So I'm just going to show the report. It's about, I guess, 3 minutes long, thereabouts, 5 minutes maybe. I want to show it in full, just for context. Basically, today, one of the rioters from this summer has got the toughest sentence yet, 9 years plus 5 years, I think, on license. So I'm going to let the report speak for itself and then share my thoughts on this. The previous report, you may pick up the last little segment about prison overcrowding, so a related issue. And the government, apparently, there is unannounced plans that there may be some scheme to send prisoners to Estonia. That's it may not be an entirely a bad idea, though, from a due process point of view. It'd be, access to lawyers and stuff. But we clearly have a problem in the prisons. But I think this is totally justified. I want to see violent thugs put behind bars where they belong when they're directly threatening lives. And I don't equivocate on this. I have no time for this argument that these people are fed up citizens. I'm going to show the report and let it speak for itself and then give my take afterwards. So I'm going to try and keep this as still as I can. Apologies in advance if there's a little bit of shaking. It's not deliberate. I'm just trying to keep it as still as I can. And here we go.
Looking at the possibility of sending prisoners to be held in Estonia, I understand there are no plans to announce that plan.
Daniel, thank you. And you can see more of that special report inside Pentonville Prison later in the programme. And as we were hearing there, the riots in England and Northern Ireland just over a month ago were a key factor in the rise of the prison population to that record high. In the last half an hour, a 9-year jail sentence, the biggest so far, has been handed out following disorder at an asylum hotel in Rotherham. Jess Lane reports.
Rioters starting fires and forcing their way into this Holiday Inn Express last month. Police officers were attacked and injured in the violence at the hotel in Manvers near Rotherham, which had been housing more than 200 asylum seekers. Today, 27-year-old Thomas Burley from Rotherham has been sent to prison for 9 years, the longest sentence given to anyone involved in the riots so far, after pleading guilty to arson with intent to endanger life, violent disorder and possession of an offensive weapon. The court was shown this video of him wearing a black hooded coat and red mask, placing wood on top of the fire started in this bin, which was later pushed through the door. He shouts abuse at police before putting a large piece of chipboard onto the fire, which takes hold quickly. He was also accused of throwing items at the police and squaring up to officers with riot shields. This is the second sentencing in 3 days following the disorder which took place at the hotel in Rotherham. Craydon Mackenzie from Barnsley was sent to prison for 3 years. The unemployed labourer was one of the first people to enter the Holiday Inn. This video was shown in court of Mackenzie walking through the hotel as terrified staff hid in the kitchen. The court heard Mackenzie was also in a crowd attacking a group of riot police with fire extinguishers and other weapons amid shouts of "burn it down." Nearly 5 weeks after the violent scenes in Rotherham and around the country, people who were involved are still being told they'll be found and punished. Jessica Lane, BBC News.
Well, our North of England correspondent Danny Savage is at Sheffield Crown Court, where Thomas Burley was sentenced. Danny, we saw him there pushing that lighted bin towards the hotel. This was one of the most serious cases in the riots. What has the judge had to say this morning?
Yeah, it was the most serious since, I suppose, many people think back to the unrest over the summer, and the pictures from outside that Holiday Inn Express in Manvers near Rotherham are those that spring to mind for many people. And he was the latest person to be sentenced in. But as the judge said today, it was by far the most serious one of its kind to come from that case. The judge spoke for over half an hour sentencing Thomas Burley this afternoon. He said it was unquestionably one of the worst of many cases which have been heard in this court. It was nothing to do with legitimate public protest. It was mob rule. The venom of racism affected the entirety of what occurred. He went on to describe the feelings of people inside the hotel at the time. He said people inside thought they were going to die. The lives of at least 50 people were endangered. They were all mentally scarred and in peril of being killed or injured. And after that, he went on to say that Burley was encouraged by malicious and ignorant posts on social media, that he followed racist accounts, and he was sentencing him on the basis of it being a racist incident. He was jailed for 9 years. That's the longest sentence handed down for any of the civil unrest that we've heard about in the previous couple of months. He was sentenced for 9 years, but that was extended for 5 years as well. He will be on licence for 5 years once he comes out. So effectively, there's a 14-year sentence. Anna.
Danny, thank you. And the suspended Labour councillor Ricky Jones has pleaded not guilty this morning to a charge of encouraging violent disorder in connection with comments made at a London counter-protest. He appeared at Snaresbrook Crown Court via video link. Video had emerged online of Mr Jones appearing to tell a crowd in Walthamstow that far-right demonstrators should have their throats cut. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is chairing a meeting to look at ways.
There we go. I didn't deliberately cut it off there, to try and silence the next report, but just that's not what this video is about. The next report, of course, is a related issue. And I do say it's related to the small boats issue, but I think the way the judge summed that up is correct. This was not legitimate protest, mob rule. And please, this fug has got a stiff sentence. I mean, when you really strip this back and look at what that involved, had he been successful in getting that skip that was on fire into the hotel, people were trapped in there. They couldn't have come out because they would have been attacked by the mob. So they were trapped in the hotel, staff and asylum seekers. And had they been successful, you know, we'd be talking mass murder. We'd be talking up to 50 people killed. This is the 7th anniversary of Grenfell. We know what fire can do. So I think for that crime, I think 9 years is probably right. He's lucky it didn't get longer, actually. I mean, I have zero sympathy, zero. But the reason I mention this, the reason I want to highlight this report is because I guarantee there will be people on the right, the likes of GP News and so on, who will be looking at cases like this and they'll be bleating about how it's unfair because it's not balanced out or whatever. That there's issues around two-tier policing, and I included a bit at the end about the Labour councillor, the Asian guy, who has also appeared before court for incitement. The fact that he spoke about cutting throats of far right rioters. Now, um, I don't approve of that either. He's a public official, he's elected. It's not like he was saying this in a sort of heated moment where he's confronting a mob. He was in a safe crowd there, utterly irresponsible, and he should face consequences for that as an elected official. Because when you have, violence that's ongoing across the country, there's just no excuse for incitement. Anger is one thing, incitement is another. Um, but what troubles me more than those scenes of violence themselves. I mean, the implications of that. And by the way, it wasn't just aimed at migrant hotels. That one was in Rotherham, but there was minorities attacked during those riots. So I'm sick and tired of people trying to downplay the racist element to it. Unquestionably, there was a racist element in Middlesbrough, and I'm probably repeating myself, but it's important. In Middlesbrough, motorists were stopped by thugs who wanted to see what ethnicity they were. In another street in Middlesbrough, an entire street had its windows put out. Many of them were Asian families. There were white families as well. People driven from their homes by thugs. In Sunderland, 2 Filipino nurses were attacked. Now, you may or may not be aware that the Philippines is a country that I'm close to. I don't want to go into personal details in this video, but there are people very close to me from the Philippines, and I just think if they'd been in that position, it's just it's scary to think of. People who are in a profession where they're saving British lives, targeted by ignorant racist thugs, and these people are goons, right? They're not particularly intelligent. They will believe everything they read online that's spread around by irresponsible sources, not irresponsible sources, deliberately malicious sources like Telegram. Of course, his recent arrest in Paris, the CEO of Telegram, it's an interesting coincidence. It's not, the French say it's not a political move. I don't know whether it is or not, but I'm sick and tired of these tech billionaires who think that they've got no responsibility. Elon Musk, like I say, I think he revels in chaos. I mean, he can't say as CEO he has no responsibility and he just lets people say whatever they want as long as it's within the law. The point is, it isn't within the law often. You know, inciting violence is not within the law. And then Musk, this is the thing that makes me angry about Elon Musk. He then chirps up that the British are cracking down on free speech. Well, he can't have it both ways. He can't claim that he respects the law while simultaneously whining about free speech when people are crossing that line into criminal offences. So I just think Musk doesn't care. He really doesn't care about violence, about anarchy, about riots. He's not the one picking up the pieces. You know, people hail Musk as this really cool, charismatic guy. I think he's a flamethrower. I think he doesn't care. And the fact he's endorsed Trump says everything. Um, so to hell with Elon Musk and to hell with um, others who try to downplay this. I'm genuinely disgusted by it. I mean, I'm certainly no bleeding heart lefty, to put it in a crude way, when it comes to migration. I do think there are people who shouldn't be here. I do think we need to get control of the situation. The government spoke about cracking down on people traffickers. You know, there is the latest tragedy in the Channel 12, people killed, mostly Eritreans, including children. Um, there isn't a quick fix to that problem, but clearly it has to be a priority for the government. I'm not naive. I don't want to see this end this situation where people are coming in. Charities say, you know, tackling the smugglers is one part of it, but there needs to be a safe passage. I'm not sure I agree with that because that is just giving people a green light to make those dangerous journeys and to come across. And I'm aware that, you know, migrants themselves say that it doesn't deter them, but ultimately they are entering the country illegally, and you cannot have this end stream of people coming into the country. So there is legitimate contentions with that. But where I differ with the likes of GB News is their attempt to frame rioting racist thugs as normal citizens who are fed up. You know, someone who is going to allow their anger to get to a point where they're prepared to commit mass murder, and that's what that sort of arson would involve. That's just something that goes to another realm. I mean, I've been unemployed, I've been frustrated, I've been disillusioned, but I don't go out and set someone's car on fire. And by the way, they were also endangering the lives of the police. As the judge said, you know, the people involved in the hotel are going to be scarred for a long time. That would be a terrifying experience. Imagine having a mob, probably many of them intoxicated, you know, hundreds of people. Saw the footage that I've just shown. Hundreds of people basically wanting to lynch you. I mean, it reminds me of the Jim Crow deep south of the United States when a black man would be accused of something, you know, looking at a white woman the wrong way, and you get the mob outside the prison cell and they'd want to lynch him. And in many cases, they did. If the police were not there, this is a scary thing. If the police were not there, they absolutely would have barged in and, if not killed people, seriously hurt them. Um, and that's chilling. So you get a mouthpiece like Tommy Robinson bleating about why are the police protecting mosques. The reason they were protecting mosques is because they were specifically targeted. Now, of course, all communities should be protected. There are legitimate questions about policing. I don't think it should be totally dismissed that the police aren't consistent. I think there is a problem of consistency. So I won't say that Farage was totally wrong to ask that question, that there is some legitimacy to that. The police don't come out of this entirely clean, but I have a lot of sympathy for a regular officer just trying to do their job, dealing with an intoxicated mob, throwing missiles at them, you know, trying to attack people. I have sympathy for ordinary officers. Yeah, I think there could be legitimate criticism over the decisions that forces make. But, you know, what I'm driving at with all of this is if you're a decent person, you have to see that there are red lines. You have to see that no matter how angry people are, there's just certain things that cannot be justified. Attempted murder cannot be justified. You know, mob mentality cannot be justified. It's not legitimate protest. I mean, Incidentally, the whole thing about two-tier policing, I think both left and right are, although it's associated with the right, the left have done it as well. I mean, when eco-extremists have been jailed for motorway sabotage, they bleat about how awful it is and, oh, what about the rioters this summer? It's quite simple. If you cross a line, you should face consequences. I'm someone who very much believes in the rule of law. I mean, I've been very critical of the justice establishment, and I remain critical of it in many ways. But the events of the summer, I am pleased. Actually, if anything, sentencing is getting a little bit tougher, and I'm pleased to see that. I've been calling for it for years. I mean, if you are, I don't care what your so called protest is or your ideology, if you're crossing a line, you should face the consequences. So an eco zealot may not be throwing petrol bombs or violently threatening people, but by sabotaging a motorway, they're endangering lives. By sabotaging a motorway, they're messing with thousands of people. Roger Hallam got 5 years for that, and I hope he serves every day of that 5 years. The other thing with eco extremists is they show no remorse at all. I dare say some of the racist rioters might even attempt to show remorse, but only because they got caught. There is a fundamental principle here of the rule of law. Nobody should be above the law. And I'm sick and tired of criminality being,
criminal gangs who smuggle people.
excuse me, it just went into when you pause it for a certain length of time, it just starts up automatically. Yeah, I'm sick and tired of certain pundits and commentators and others describing criminal behavior as protest. Stop it. The media collectively, I think, has to stop doing this. What would I propose instead? I would say people involved or rioters. Rioters. In the case of eco extremists, I would say activists is it's not ideal, but I prefer that to protester because I think the term protester kind of gives us this idea of people marching peacefully with placards. But, trying to commit mass murder in a hotel or trying to sabotage a motorway is not peaceful protest. It's just not. And I can already hear apologists for to stop
Across the
oil
town.
saying,
12
oh, you're comparing them. Well, obviously, it's a different nature. Eco zealots aren't racist, but they are messing with people's lives. It's quite simple. Just there's just when someone crosses a line into criminality, that just goes beyond. I don't care what the ideology is. I really don't care whether it is anti-immigration, whether it is anti-illegal immigration, whether it is eco-zealotry. I don't care what the cause is. If you cross a line, you cross a line, and you should be held to account. Now, there will be some that say, oh, but these rioters are getting tougher sentences than regular criminals. I think the justice system, I've long argued there needs to be tougher sentences for violent crimes. Um, but I still think you need to consider the position the government is in. What are people seriously proposing, the likes of GB News? Do they really think there should be a softly approach at a time when there is anarchy going on? Do they really think that people who
migrants died
are
on Tuesday when their
excuse me, that people who are inciting violence should be treated leniently? I don't think so. And of course, the tears will come out after the fact. That's not how they feel when they're in the middle of a mob wanting people's blood. So I'm pleased these are tough sentences, but I'm aware that the likes of G being used will try and frame it as fed up citizens. Or we don't agree with what they've done, but they're fed up citizens. I'm so disgusted by G being used. And, Farage says that they're the party of law and order reform. Well, let him prove it. Let him say unequivocally, that he supports the sentences handed out. If he can't do that, then he can't be trusted on law and order because he's selective about it. And incidentally, the Labour Council, well, I've already mentioned this, he also has appeared before court for his explicit threats to violence. I mean, I don't know how he can say he's not guilty because he clearly was, you know,
small boat came apart off the
making the throat gesture. So, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. But there's a fundamental principle. I don't care what your ideology is. I don't care if you're left wing, a conservative, whatever. There has to be a fundamental principle here of the rule of law. Yes, people have every right to be angry about policy. People have a right to peacefully protest. But that means not crossing a line. It means not engaging in vandalism. It means not engaging in violence. And it means not messing with the public. That's my interpretation of peaceful protest. Um, So, it's like, for example, if people gather in a public square with placards and they're not actually being violent and they're not inciting violence, I think that's legitimate. The problem with the likes of Tommy Robinson, people say, oh, he advocates peaceful protest. No, he doesn't. He absolutely incites violence. He riles up his crowd. He might occasionally say, oh, we'll do it peacefully. But come on,
French coast. Now, ministers.
come on. I mean, I just mentioned him. I don't want to give him more credit than he deserves. But this is not someone who's responsible. This is not someone who is a leader that people should look up to. He's a glorified lout as far as I'm concerned. Also, he has a track record, apart from his long criminal record, he has a track record of spreading fake news. I mean, this isn't one or two mistakes. This is deliberate incitement, and I'm sick and tired of people praising him. I'm sick and tired of people praising him as some sort of working class hero. I mean, that's an insult to the working class. There's many working class people who don't want to be associated with the likes of Tommy Robinson. So stop it. This is just a question of, um, yes, consistency, but the rule of law has to apply across the board. If people want to raise the issue of consistency, that's valid. I agree with that. Just don't defend racist thugs.